we're live on my profile. Here we go. All right. Hello and welcome everybody to tonight's extremely special episode with one of my favorite ladies and a very special guest indeed, Habibti. Welcome, Maria Al-Masani. She is a multi-talented woman. I mean, her credentials are too many for me to list. But I am going to mention a few. She is a Miss Universe finalist. She's also an economist, a couturier, a stoic femininity coach, and I mean, a woman of many talents. Maria, would you kindly introduce yourself to my audience, please, and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
So, how do you do? And Kifek, hope you're doing well. Okay,
how are you, darling?
So, a bit about me. Now I'm a couturier, but also color season consultant. And in the process of doing this with the pandemic, I used to do Lebanese weddings before. That was my primary business. But then, you know, with the pandemic, not many weddings, right? So I had to change things. So I thought, dress for personal and professional success, right?
You know, back to red pill masculinity and what you said about those who perceive themselves as victims being more likely to commit violence. We were talking about incels. So for those of our viewers who don't know what incels are or red pill masculinity, let's talk about that. Incel comes from involuntary celibate. So these are men who feel that they are rejected by women. They're very angry at women. They tend to perceive the entire gender as being gold digging, exploitative, and they do see themselves as victims because they are denied sex, or they're denied sex with the kind of women that they want. And, you know, there was a very famous shooting by one incel, and, you know, who wrote this kind of manifesto where he expressed his rage and he perceived himself as a nice guy. And so he felt entitled to sex, and he felt entitled to access, intimate access to women because he was nice. And why didn't women want him? So perversely, even though he committed a mass shooting and murdered people en masse, he perceived himself as a victim. And I think, you know, we see this quite...
I think there's a large part of this conversation that is missing among women, and it is because of also female entitlement also.
Yes.
A large missing part of the conversation is autism, Asperger's, and how abusive neurotypicals are to us. I found coming to North America, the first people who were kind to me were red pill people, red pills, incels, and at that time I didn't look very feminine. I was very masculine. They, you know, because people are very mean to those who have Asperger's in North America. You know,
yes.
And even in other parts of the world. So Elon Musk, when he was younger, fellow students would throw cans at him going to school. Like, abuse is normal if you have autism.
Yes.
So, and in American culture, it's always the jock, the athlete, the one with the social skills and no brain, right? And there is no room with American popular culture for people like me. Okay? Luckily, I grew up in the Middle East. So therefore, I didn't commit any crimes. I only spent my last year of high school in the United States. And I thought it was frightful that they have such a job culture and weapons are accessible. Maybe they should start censoring Hollywood and force Hollywood to also promote people like Elon Musk. You know, because it's a lot of it is a lack of representation of people like myself, like Elon Musk, and so on. And then as a result, kids can be very, oh, you're such a loser, blah, blah, blah. And in the Middle East, because there's a value for education, so I didn't, you know, I went to an American school then, international school. So I did face some of what you would face in the United States, but it was generally a kind environment. I did face some bullying. But a lot of, I did face quite a bit immigrating. You know, why are you not a dumb bimbo, you know? Why are you not a jock, right? And so there is a lot of bullying towards autists, a lot of lack of acceptance of our disability by neurotypicals, okay? And so the problem with this is that we're pushed into little communities, right? And where there is a purity poverty spiral, where the most toxic person, who's the most flamboyant, who's the worst human being, they get the most attention. And those with low self-esteem will follow the one who's getting the attention. So how I got acquainted to the Red Pill, I was working for the Liberal Party and a socialist party called the NDP. And the women were not very nice. Only one or two were, but a lot of women were insecure. And the men were nice, right?
I think, Maria, if I may, interject something. This is another thing I think that women like to tell themselves, is that women are less aggressive than men. And, Jordan Peterson was saying that actually the difference is very slight, but it just manifests itself differently. And women display aggression by character assassination, spreading rumors, gossip, backstabbing, and it can be incredibly hurtful and it can be incredibly damaging. I mean, I think people underestimate that type of aggression, especially because a lot of it is covert. It flies under the radar, so to speak, whereas overt aggression is in your face and you can see it, and so you're better prepared really to deal with it. Sometimes the covert aggression tactics of hostile women, it takes a while for you to catch on, and by that time some damage may have already been sustained to your reputation, to your career. So
yeah, victims of physical violence say the emotional violence was the most painful, the gaslighting, all of that. So, and that's why, being new, I found that the Liberal Party, after work finishes at 5, now COVID, thankfully it's better, but before COVID, what they used to do, it used to be an open bar. Lobbyists would all have different parties and you'd have to network to promote your career. It was awful. And I learned the hard way, have to go home after men are at their second drink. I was new, I just came from the Middle East, so I was there with my Pepsi and men were there with their beer, and I was asking young men, what is it like in Canada? How do things work here? And that's how, after they got drunk, I learned about the Red Pill, because they felt comfortable telling me and these are leftist men, right? The nice guys. Right? The vegans. Those men who are a socialist. And what's funny, in the parliament, many right-wing men were not into the Red Pill. They say, why do I need that? I have a great job. I'm handsome. I work out in the gym to be handsome. And I have a great job. I have a great career trajectory. I work to dress nice. And therefore, when I go out, I attract women. Why do I need this silly monkey stuff, right? Where a lot of the liberal, because the traditional men don't need this Red Pill stuff, but it's the leftist men, ironically, because they were told to be a nice guy by all these feminists and they don't get laid. And then they see the conservatives, and that they see the conservative men are always the ones who have the girlfriends and everything. And so they think, how is that right? So they go online, and that's where they find this Red Pill. So Red Pill is not necessarily left or right. It's a tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's basically what Lenin said, was that the capitalist media isn't telling you the truth, right? It's just telling you what's in the interest of the corporations. And usually it's a bunch of lies, because the truth is free to promote corporate self-interest at your expense. So therefore, he thought that the media should be owned by the workers and the state, and then he became the man, and then Russians got red-pilled on Lenin's lies, right? The media and the mainstream are always, the red pill is that they're not some benevolent Santa Claus, but
Yes.
they're telling the truth that is convenient for them and not for you. Otherwise, why spend all this money and time and effort? Say, okay, I don't trust the media 100%. That's a very wide spectrum. And within it is a very toxic victim cult. The people who used to be left-wing, and within the left, there is this progressive, oh, I'm a victim of this or that, and it comes from Marxism. And many of these men, their mothers are Marxist feminists, right? And so what they get from their mother is that, oh, she's a victim of the patriarchy. That's usually where it starts. Their mother sees herself as a victim of the patriarchy. Well, being a nice guy doesn't work.
They're always astonished, aren't they, when they venture out into the dating world or, you know, onto the sexual marketplace, if you will, and they are astonished that women don't respect weak men and don't admire the nice guys, and in fact are repelled by the feminine traits that they feel should reassure women, whereas actually what reassures women is mature masculinity. That's what reassures women and also turns them on sexually.
But the left-wing women lie and say the opposite of what attracts them. So they see women who, they listen to their mother's advice, and then they see all these vegan feminists who are Bernie Sanders supporters. They moodle them, use them as a male poodle, and they're screwing all the most toxic, alt-right, far-right, you know, because they have no concept of masculinity, these young women, so they mistake the bad boy for
Maria, you know, they think, you know, these ladies, the irony is, and I have seen this so many times over and over again, they'll tell you they want that type of man, and yet post-divorce, the very things that they complain about are that he was ineffectual, indecisive, effeminate. I mean, you know, confirming exactly what you and I are saying over here, except there's this kind of collective delusion that we must all maintain in the name of equality.
No, they want masculine men and they want feminine women, and we lie about androgyny, and that is the big problem. And so that's where the confusion lies. So these young men have a mother wound. They feel betrayed by the mother, their culture, the society, that they've been told to be this effeminate vegan, right? And then
they're resentful, Maria. I think they're resentful because they do realize, even while they're trying to play this, I'm a nice guy, I'm the feminist guy, and I used to come across them a lot in my days of political activism as well. Boy, there's a lot of rage simmering just under the surface because they're emasculated, and they resent that. They resent their denial of masculine expression. The communities that they grow up in, where, you know, they have to play the nice guy or pander to this, you know, feminist ideal of what a man should be, is that they feel castrated.
Yeah, they feel castrated, and then they get screwed over, and the one who doesn't play by the rules, right? And a lot of women resent. Which was interesting is that the red pill men, they really respected me. And the nice girls that would chase them resented that, how come I don't want those men, right? It's just they helped guide me and tell me the truth about Canada. That, you know, and again, it was a twisted truth. They saw themselves as victims and all that. But coming to Canada, they were the first people who weren't lying to me or were not scared to tell the truth, that there's something else going out there. And so I dug more, and I realized their truth isn't also the truth either. They see themselves as victims, but it goes back to the mother wound, right? The mother says that she's a victim of the patriarchy. So they try to listen to their mother. They get screwed over in the dating marketplace. They get screwed over in the workplace. They feel betrayed. And what they learned, what they retained from their mother, is that they are a victim, right? And this is what is dangerous. So they are no longer a feminist, but they still are. in the socialist victim cult, right?
I was about to say that, yes, speaking of those types of men, you know, in some of these activism spheres, the ones who identify as feminists, leftists, etc., I think part of their frustration as well is that they feel that they can only be leaders amongst women, which in a way, in the short term, feeds their ego, but in the long term, again, adds to that recipe of festering frustration and resentment, because that isn't where they want to be. That isn't what they want to be admired for. And then they're not being authentic, right? And that is very difficult, to suppress your very nature and to be told constantly that it's toxic, because there's so many aspects of masculinity that are labeled toxic, where it's just masculinity. So assertiveness is masculinity. It's not toxic. You know, the desire to lead is a masculine trait, whereas, you know, as feminine women, we tend to be more agreeable, let's say. So, you know, but this erasure of their masculinity ends up bubbling to the surface sometimes. And I think this is why you have these communities, you know, the incel communities, they're very angry at women. You know, some red pill men, it's a pity party. Not all of them are necessarily hostile towards women. There is a whole kind of spectrum there, but you cannot live your life.
So red pill rage is the term for red pill MGTOW. The ones who are hostile towards women, men call them red pill ragers.
Yes.
So
let's just explain MGTOW, please, for our viewers, Maria. That's men going their own way. So in case some of our ladies aren't familiar with the term MGTOW, these are men who have decided to, let's say, give up on women, reject women before women have the chance to reject them, and they've chosen to live their lives free in their minds of women.
And the worst ones are the ones who will have sexual encounters with women, but not relationships.
Yes.
So those are the most toxic MGTOW. So, but there are different types of the red pill ragers. Some are incels. There are all sorts of things, right? So red pill rage is, yeah. So that's simply the part of the red pill spectrum that is specifically misogynist. And a lot of it is simply inverting feminism. Most of these men come from the left. And they decide that this is enough. And often they're autistic.
I'm just going to read some of the comments from our ladies. So one is from Joy. She says, as a dyslexic and on the autistic spectrum and a highly sensitive person, it was very hard for me to cope in this wonderful world. I like what Maria said about riding your own emotions. I had to learn how to feel my emotions in quiet. Thank you for sharing, Joy. Wissam says, most men turn into red pill because they do not have any other alternative to get knowledge of women, since playing the feminist modern guy did not get him laid. And another of our ladies says, you guys look gorgeous. Thank you so much, sweetheart. Thank you. So, Maria, what have you got to say in response to Wissam's?
I do have a response to it. My husband said that it's really a pity in a modern world we lack, you know, traditionalism, because the point in traditionalism, he said, he learned how to be masculine from his father, right? And his father learned it from his father and other men in the army and so on. So masculinity is passed on, and he said it's complex. It's not, you know, black and white like red pill tells you, right? Masculinity is knowing how to be a gentleman, right, without being a simp. That's quite the line. You want to be an alpha without being too aggressive, because high value women, they don't value simps. A simp, the female equivalent, is a doormat, or we call them pick-me-sha, pick me, please like me, right? So we don't. It's for men. It's difficult. It's said because it's really nuanced. You don't want to be the doormat, and you don't want to be stingy, but you don't want to be so overgenerous that the woman loses attraction because a man who is generous out of a fawning response, we are immediately disgusted because we find him subconsciously lower status. When a man is too stingy, you know, we think, oh, this man is useless. So, and when a man is generous in the wrong way,
it's difficult because people who haven't got,
you know, you have to be mentored by men in your community in order to learn masculinity.
Yes, and in order to learn how to be discerning.
Yeah, it's internet masculinity is just a lot of it. There is some stuff that is helpful, right? I mean, look at Jordan Peterson. But aside from that, what sells is the most controversial, the most toxic, like Kevin Samuels. We've all heard of him because he's crazy. And a lot of the garbage floats to the top because it's the most notorious and crazy. And then when you're typing on Google, who will show up? Kevin Samuels, of course, right? It's always the most toxic coaches who show up first because they're the most insane. And so that has, for a novice who realized, oh my gosh, the whole feminism thing that their mother taught them doesn't work. So they go on Google and they find Kevin Samuels. And of course that is not helpful. And the mainstream refuses to address a lot of the problems. And finally, there is this special snowflake syndrome in both men and women, which is what is ruining dating today in both and creating the entitlement. And the entitlement arises from a mistaken theory in parenting. You know, the self-esteem parenting or participation trophy, everyone gets a trophy. And the problem with that, it creates nasty, ghastly, and beastly entitlement in adults.
We have a comment, sorry, from Mascala, who says, internet masculinity is the most toxic form of masculinity ever. I think, you know, the problem, Maria, is, and you and I have discussed this before, is what's happened is that, you know, you've got all of these so-called alpha male coaches, and then you've got the Bubble Gum Femininity, so-called level up crowd. And one of the parallels that I see between both and the way that they mirror one another is that they're both caricatures of masculinity and caricatures of femininity. There's no depth. You know, both men and women, it's fine to be agreeable, as you said, but one must also be discerning, have good boundaries, be able to assert oneself in a feminine, ladylike manner. You and I do this all the time because we do also, you know, sometimes provoke, let's say, or trigger, you know, a certain type of individual. And so, you know, we handle those deftly without feeling like we have to run off and cry somewhere or back down from our opinions.
But to go back to the special snowflake thing, I do think that is a big problem in both men and women, and in red pill masculinity, and also male entitlement, where after dinner men think they're entitled to sex after they spent, you know, $200 on a dinner, so $100 on the girl. They're like, oh, you know, why aren't you coming home with me? Well, excuse me, a sex worker is what? $700 for half an hour, and he spent at least 3 hours having dinner with her. Like, you know, I'm sorry, like, if someone's ever told me that, I'd say, okay, how about I will send you the bill for my company, right? It doesn't work that way.
Do you know, I'd also like to mention, you know, to our viewers that that, you know, we come from a culture where, of course, men don't feel entitled to sex just because they took you out to dinner. You know, in our culture, you know, our backgrounds, that there's a courtship period, because I also want to say there's some female accountability, really, you know, because women honestly are giving up sex for much less than a $200 dinner, and this is something I would like to talk about. For a beer, let's, you know, Netflix and chill. And, you know, I feel that this is where feminism, you know, mainstream feminism has let down a lot of Western women, because, you know, our cultural background, we again, we have this expectation to be courted. If that courtship develops and becomes serious, then the suitor must come and ask for the prospective bride's hand in marriage from the father. And part of that is also mentioning how much wealth he has got, what is he willing to write in her name. You know, in Islam, this is very, very clearly outlined. This isn't, you know, it is actually part of the law. And in fact, you know, just to kind of give our ladies a little bit more perspective, in Islam, if a husband neglects his financial duties towards his wife, she doesn't have to have sex with him. You know, it is that clear. So, you know, so you and I, we come from a very different background. You know, we have, this is kind of innate to us. However, in the West, you know, I feel that women have been thrown to the sharks by mainstream feminism. They've been thrown to the sharks.
Yeah.
And men are getting the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. It's the worst men that get the best of both worlds. My husband and his friends were complaining about what they call the THOT, the thought. That, and it's funny, they were into those women when they were younger. And they said, you know, this is a big problem. That no one told us that once we acquired resources and wanted a wife, that a woman would be interested in would be so scarce. So by telling men no, for me it was really easy to find men who were looking for marriage. They were really happy that, oh my gosh, somebody who's looking for the same thing and is not the town bicycle, however, right? Because I kept saying no, you know, that attracted the marrying men and repelled the players. But the players exist, and there is this ridiculous sort of entitlement by men like Kevin Samuels, right? And we see it in the women too, and it comes from the time where the parenting, where there's so much emphasis on self-esteem and disconnecting the self-esteem from achievement that you see in the developing world. Parents, like Chinese parents, will not praise the kid they'll say I love you, but they won't praise the kid unless the kid plays the piano, brings A's home, does something, right? Japanese parents will not praise the kid, baby, until the baby puts the red toys in the red box, the blue toys in the blue box, and so on. And Eastern parents, in order for the child to be successful, connect praise with achievement to develop real self-esteem and a realistic self-assessment in the child. And then they feel that a woman feels that she can be a cow who ate a refrigerator and the size of 3 Lizzos, but entitled to a man who's built like Lizzo's dancers. And I like to use Lizzo as an example because her dancers are all bodybuilders and have beautiful figures and are all hardworking to make themselves beautiful to women. And yet she does nothing to make herself equally fit for the viewing pleasure of men. And many women feel, oh, I can be any size, but I deserve a billionaire banker who is also an international bodybuilding champion and a Hollywood star.
I'd also like to say on the flip side of that, Maria, because we are going to talk about bubblegum femininity. The other side of that coin is that there are a lot of women who think that because they've had a certain number of procedures done, because you and I have both seen this in a lot of these so-called hypergamy and level up communities, there's so much about the external appearance, and there's no depth of character, there's no quality. You know, these women have got an interchangeable personality. And what they don't understand is that if you really do want to level up, you cannot be messy emotionally, you cannot act like an entitled teenager. I mean, you know, because these plastic surgeried Barbie dolls are a dime a dozen, you know. And you look at these IG models who've had all kinds of work done, and they go to Dubai to be pumped and dumped, okay, in exchange for money. But is that really leveling up? Is that
Google Dubai, ladies, Google Dubai porta potty to understand what those Instagram.
Just make sure that you're not about to sit down for a meal before you read that story. Maria, we have a comment that ties into what we were talking about just now. One of our ladies says, the only dating advice I received was, don't be messing around with any knucklehead. I ended up marrying the first person I ever kissed. It has been a hard marriage. So there are ladies out there, you know, who are craving feminine mentorship. And, you know, that, you know, you've got the mainstream feminism, you know, throwing them to the sharks. We can do whatever we want. Casual sex is fine. It's empowering. It's dangerous to sleep with people you don't know, okay? Without even talking about the moral consideration, it is dangerous. And I've dedicated previous live episodes to this, and I will be talking about this more in the future. And so you have these women, and actually, Maria, you know, that there are studies that show that there is a link between low self-esteem and casual sex. So, you know, there is scientific data that supports this. This isn't just my or your perspective on femininity. The other thing is that a lot of these women, again, they get entangled with covert narcissists because they are taught that femininity is a good thing. But here's the clincher, is that a lot of covert narcissist men, a lot of predatory men, have got a lot of shadow feminine energy. They seem very agreeable. The woman feels, oh, he's a dream come true. Later on, when she's being raked over the hot coals, you know, and furthermore, she's also entered this marriage without any kind of financial guarantees or security, because love conquers all. I mean, there are so many of these concepts, Maria, that are setting up women for a world of pain. And where does one really begin to address all of it? Maria, we have an Arabic expression, which goes al-hub mu'amali, which means love is treatment, how you treat the other. And I think in the West, they're just confused, you know, this infatuation, you know, where there's this stage filled with hormones and oxytocin and, you know, all of the, you know, those pleasure neurons are firing, and they think that this is love. But yes, I do think that love is treatment, and that goes both ways. And so the masculine man who is loving and devoted to his feminine wife appreciates the way that she treats him. And, you know, he's not looking for a provider. He's not looking for a woman to provide for him. He's looking for a confidant. He's looking for that softness at home. That, you know, again, a lot of Western women, I think, don't realize how much they are shooting themselves in the unpedicured feet. You know, when you know, you know, a lot of them think that he's going to be blown away by the fact that I'm open, that I'm free. That's actually scary to a masculine provider, because, you know, you want a man to invest in you. You are basically saying, I might be a good lay, but I'm a bad investment. Mm-hmm. Maria, and on that note, I want to say thank you so much for being here tonight. And I mean, it was such a pleasure really talking to you. And I'm sure that so many of our ladies are going to find this talk beneficial and educational and informative. And I really can't thank you enough, Maria, for giving us your time this evening. And inshallah, in the future, we will plan perhaps a future episode that's a little bit more, inshallah, a little bit more, how do you say, let's say precise. Maria, Habibti, thank you so much, truly. It was such a pleasure. Ladies, thank you so much for being here this evening. And if you've got any questions for Maria and I, please do feel free to leave them below. Thank you again, and wishing you all a very, very good night from Cairo. Maria, Habibti, thank you so much. And it's been such a pleasure. Maria, Habibti, thank you so much, truly. It was such a pleasure. Ladies, thank you so much for being here this evening. And if you've got any questions for Maria and I, please do feel free to leave them below. Thank you again, and wishing you all a very, very good night from Cairo. Maria, Habibti, thank you so much. And it's been such a pleasure.